this is me getting my thickness sander out of the corner. So we're going to thickness 1, 2, 3, 4 guitars. I've been struggling with trying to figure out what I wanted to do here. Here's what I've got. I'll show you real quick. One guitar is going to be a Lutz top with rosewood back and sides. There's the rosewood. There's the sides. Again, that's going to be one of them. Another one I'm going to do is this high-figured mahogany guitar. Now this is really super stuff. I don't know if you can see the figuring on this, but as we build you'll see it better. Just 100% full of figuring all over in mahogany. 4 pieces, so I got back, top, and sides, so that's going to be an all mahogany box. So that's 2. The next one I'm going to do is this mahogany that I just love. It's so light and it's got this real fine grain figuring in it, and again I don't know if you can quite see that. There's the sides for that, but again this will be 4 pieces I cut out of a flitch. So I've got the back and sides for this, with the sides, the back, and the top all mahogany. So 2 of these guitars are going to be all mahogany. One's going to be rosewood with Lutz on the top, and the last one is this same mahogany again, which I just, boy, this stuff is so light, and light is where it's at in my book. So this is really pretty. High figuring in this stuff. There's another, again, I don't know if you can quite see the figuring in this thing, but it's really tight, small little tiger stripe or flame figuring in that mahogany. Again, really lightweight, and this top is going to be a fun piece. This is going to be a 3-piece top. This used to be a bookshelf. It's pine, and it is old. I know personally it's at least 50 years old, this stuff. The grain is, you just can't even count the grain lines. It gets so close there. And again, I don't know if you can see that. It's not wide enough to do a top on its own, but I'm going to do 3 pieces. Extremely light. It taps. It sounds great tapping. This is going to be a really sweet top. 3-piece pine top. So mahogany with pine, a mahogany over mahogany, a high-figured mahogany over mahogany, and a rosewood with the Lutz on top. So now I'm going to start the sander, and I'll video a little bit of that. So this is my thickness sander. It's a fairly common product on the market today. This is the 16, they call it 1632. Supposedly you can do 32 inches through it by turning it around. Good luck on that. But as you can see, it's got a drum in it. I hope you can see that. There's a drum and then a feed table. So the feed table feeds your work in, the sander runs. You can adjust the speed of the feed table. This is a Ryobi. I bought it years ago. It was a on-the-floor demo model. Works really well, just fine for what I want to do. I don't join my pieces of my top before I thickness them. I thickness all my wood, in their raw form, and then I glue them up after I thickness them. Then when you hit that with your orbital sander, you're right where you want to be. It's smooth. It's great. So I've got this also hooked up to my vacuum system. Let's start. I also use, if whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to put the board on a flat board. You want to look for something that's really flat. I put sandpaper on it, holds the piece as it's feeding through there. This is your adjuster for the up and down of the drum sander, so you can get you do this and you dial in exactly how thick you want your tops, backs, and sides to be. So first thing we will do is, I'm just going to grab something here. This is that 50, 60-year-old pine, and we're going to start running this stuff through here. And I'm not gonna thickness the rosewood right now. It's oil. It's always oilier. Try saying that 10 times real fast. And I don't want to gum up my belt, which is fairly new. So I'm gonna do all my mahoganies and spruces and this pine first, and then I'm gonna run all my rosewood just so I don't start gumming up my belts right away. So what I would do is take a piece like this and put it on my board. It won't slide. Then you start to figure out, when you're going to start getting into the sanding part. I'm going to turn on my vac. Turn on the table. You can see the table starting to move, and it will pull this in. I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to lower it down some more. Still not there. Adjust it. Still not there. Adjust it some more. Just starting to catch it. So that's the way it works. Once you run a certain thickness through, you'll set it aside. Take the next one. Now these are pretty rough cut, but if they're about the same, this might need to be raised up. Now it's going to go all right. And the last piece, we'll see if this feels thinner. I don't know if anything will happen here. Yeah, a little bit. But this end's thinner, so there you go. So that's the way the thickness sander works. I'm not going to sit here and sand everything in front of you, but you get the idea. Feed table, adjustable roller sanders, and you just start feeding your stuff through. Now when I get close to thickness, I'll stop. I'll start this again and show you how I measure this. Okay, here's something I want to mention. When you buy this stuff from your supplier, or if you're cutting it yourself from the raw wood, you want to make marks on the edge that show your true book matching. So in this case, for example, let me open this up here. If I open this up, I can see my figure lines. My figure lines are the same, so I know this is book mapped. I happen to have cut this, so I know that it's oriented properly. And these two were where it went through my saw this way, and then it opened up through the bandsaw. And so that's my true book match. Now, if I wrote on the top of this is the outside, or this is the show side, or whatever, as I thicknessed it, that would get sanded away. But on the sides, you can continue to see your relationship one to the other piece. So what you want to do are make some marks, just random marks. You can, 2 lines together, or a V shape's common, that sort of thing. And I always do both sides. I'll put some lines. Now, whenever I get these thickness sanded and put them back together, all I have to do is look on those edges, and there'll always be witness lines, or lines that tell me where the orientation for my true book match is. So that's a neat trick. Think about that before you start thicknessing your wood, that you have some marks on the edges that allow you to come back and make sure you've got your book matching proper. And in this case, where I've got a few pieces that look the same, that I got my right pieces back together as well. When you're doing several guitars at a time, when I run them through my sander, then I put them on this side. And then you're going to get to the point when you're doing several sets where they're all going to be the same thickness. When you start out, some are going to be thicker than others. You get them down to where you're running everything at the same thickness. So it's hard to remember what you do. So I've got a small shop space here, but I put them this way. And then when I get ready, I put them back over this way. So I know when I've run it through, it's going on this pile. When I've done when I lower my sander, next time they go this way. So as opposed to just putting them here and then you don't know what you've done and what you haven't done. So that's a trick to keep it thinking about that. Also, when when you're working like this, put on some music and have fun. It takes a while to run this stuff through, but enjoy the process. You're here to have fun. It's so you can play music to your grandkids someday on a little guitar you built. That's the joy here. So, have fun with this. That's the important thing. So I'm going to run a couple of these just just again to show another little bit of the process here as we go. Turn on everything, run a couple more of these, show you the process more. I'm going to start working on this file and bringing it back over here. Just barely touching it. It's just starting to hit it, so I'm going to put it on this file. Here where it's just starting to catch it. The next time when I drop this down, it'll be ready to work. Okay, a couple more thoughts. You're going to get a caliper like this, and you can get these at your local, big box hardware store. They're $20 or something, I don't know. And these measure in thousandths of an inch, or I would say get one that measures in thousandths of an inch. Here's a good way to think about that if you're a guitar player. Think about if you've got an acoustic guitar. The high E string, they call usually on a standard light gauge set of strings, is a 12 1,000ths of an inch. So these mics do that. They've got a little dial here, and you could put your high E string in there, and then this would read to the number. Actually, it's really close there to a 12. So on our tops, we generally want to go out to about 120, 130, depending on how flexible the top is. Cedar, a lot of times people will do 130. The thickness on a top is going to be, 121 thousandths. It's going to look something like that in thickness. So here's my pine I've been doing. And if I measure this for the thickness, it's reading 130 right now. I want to take this down just a hair more. But so that's one way to think about it. Other people talk about these in millimeters, 2.5 to 3 millimeters. That's another way to think about it. But I like to use, these are very common. And so in this instance, I talk in thousandths of an inch. I don't talk on other aspects of the guitar in thousandths, but on my tops, sides, and thicknessing, I talk about in thousandths. A lot of the things you'll read will be in thousandths. In theory, the thinner it is, the more flexible it's going to be, thus producing more vibration. But the downside to that is then it's going to be a little more fragile. Now, I would argue that we'll pay, $50,000 for a new car that we know is only going to last 10 years. Well, you could push that thickness down on that top a little bit, so maybe you're selling your guitars for $2,500. But so what if it only lasts 10 years? If you got 10 years of use out of a top like that, that'd be great because it sounds great, because it's a little thinner. So, it's a balancing act. You got to figure out what you want to think about that stuff. But I like to push mine a little bit thinner, so they have a little more oomph to them. But that's one of those things you're going to learn as you build and go. Another thing I wanted to say is a common way, the old guys used to thickness these plates with a hand plane. And I love my hand planes, and I'm new to them. Of the last few years, I've just learned how to use them properly, how to sharpen them properly, and I love them dearly. They're just wonderful tools. But to take a piece of wood, and particularly anything that's figured, like most of the stuff I'm doing here today has figuring, that generally means that the grain is going at interlocking directions. And with a hand plane like that, you can really get into trouble and tear out your grain easily. I admire the guys that do it with hand planes. I would encourage you, by all means, get a good hand plane and learn how to sharpen it and learn how to use it. And if you got really good, you could thickness these planes with a hand plane, these plates with a hand plane. Find somebody that's got a thickness sander. It's an expensive tool, and unless you want to do this for a while, it's a little bit of an investment. I don't know. They're in the $600, $700, $800 range probably for a small one. But the problem, and some of you guys are going to say, well, what about a planer? Well, the problem with the planer is that a lot of the stuff we deal with here are fancy woods that have a lot of character in the grain. And the planer will often chip that stuff out, particularly flame or quilting or those sorts of things. Those blades are going to grab those interlocking grains and tear parts of them out. So a planer is a little bit harder to use. Now, I use a backer board even with my thickness sander, and again, you need to do that with the planer to get down that thin. But again, a planer can be risky, especially if it's a fancy piece of wood. So the sanding drum with the feed table, generally a thickness sander is what they're called. That's the best thing for this. It's certainly the safest to maintain the thickness of the wood and do a nice job, so you're not spending a lot of time or wasting wood because your plane dug into something and took out a big snipe that now you can't get past by sanding. So find a thickness sander. A lot of towns, the town I live in here, Chicago, they've got a park district that actually has a woodworking shop apparently, and you can sign up for that maybe at your local municipality and have access to some tools like that. I'm sure if you did a little bit of a search on around your town, somebody's is a cabinet builder and they might have a thickness sander. Again, a lot of those guys use planers because they're using thicker boards, but see if you can find somebody with a thickness sander and throw them some money and take them some donuts and let them run that stuff through for you. Again, for me, my tops are going to be usually between 111 1/1000ths to 130 1/1000ths, depending on the wood and what it is. And if I'm making a mahogany top, I'll get a little thinner than that even. I'll get that down to 100-ish, 110. So find a thickness sander. That's the best way. If you want to be a traditionalist, get a hand plane, learn how to use it, learn how to sharpen it, and then have it your wood, and good luck there as well. So anyway, that's, I hope, enough about thicknessing the wood. I'm going to finish up here, and then the next thing we're going to do is join the two pieces. Okay, kids, if you like and use or find these videos interesting, educational, informative, or maybe just entertaining because you're up late at night, we'd love to have you support us. There's a few ways you can do that. One is click the subscribe button below. That helps YouTube know what we're doing and that we're serious about this. Also, you can hit that bell icon, which tells you when the next videos are coming out. We're going to try and get at least one out a week now that we're up and running here. Also, a good way to support us is become a patron over at our Patreon account. And again, there's a link below for that. Patreon's a cool way that you can sign up and give, $5 a month or $10 or whatever you feel is worth it. if you're using these videos to actually build a guitar and find it interesting and fun, please support us through Patreon. That's you know, I wish I could do this completely for free, but it takes money and time away from my other regular job. So you know, it's a big undertaking, and any support you could send this way is great. So you know, it's all been very fun so far for me, and I hope you guys are having fun at this as well, and we greatly appreciate all your support, so thanks.